Okay, so our serum is completed. It's done spinning. And I'm now going to take the serum from the recipient and I am going to put it in this has no additive in it, it's just a plain tube. I'm going to put the serum inside here and make sure I grabbed the tube that was labeled recipient. I'm going to be careful not to pull up any of the blood that's left. Okay. And I'm going to place my lid back on here. And this one's done, so I'm going to set it aside. Now I'm going to use a different pipette and do the same thing to the donor. Can you see it's labeled donor? And I'm going to, oh, good thing I checked. This is the donor. Can you see? Oh, donor, kind of, okay. So again, I'm going to make sure I do not pull up any of the clotted blood that's left behind and just get the serum. Okay, and that is complete. And I'm going to set this aside. Okay, I'm now going to dispose of the plasma that is left after centrifuging these two EDTA tubes for my donor and my recipient. Okay. Okay, I'm now going to take 1 to 2 drops of the remaining erythrocytes in the EDTA tubes, and I'm going to perform a wash. Now it's preferable that we use a 12 by 75 millimeter tube and centrifuge that, but our centrifuge only uses these small micro tubes, so I'm going to have to use that. I can show you here. It is just for these small micro tubes. The 1.3 ml is all it basically holds. There. Okay. So I've got, and these again are the micro tubes. I've already dumped out the serum separator, so it's just now a plain tube. And we can do our wash with these as well, and it will be sufficient. So I've got my recipient first, making sure this is my recipient tube, which it is. So I'm going to take 1 to 2 drops of the erythrocytes that are left in here. There's 1. Can you see what I'm doing? Oh, probably not. And there's 2. Okay. Then it wants me to fill the rest of this tube right here with 0.9% saline or sodium chloride. So I've already got my bag and I've already actually pulled it up into a needle, or I mean a syringe. So I'm just going to fill the rest of this tube up with this 0.9% sodium chloride suspension. Okay. And I'm going to place my cap back on, and then I'm going to put it in my centrifuge, and once I've done the same procedure to the donor sample, then we will centrifuge this. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing. I've got my empty tube to do the wash in. I've got a new pipette, and I'm going to take 1 to 2 drops of the erythrocyte suspension that's left over. Okay, 1, 2, okay, and I'm going to use the sodium chloride and fill this up the remainder of the way. Okay, it is now full. I'm going to put the cap back on, place it in my centrifuge, and I'll show you what's in there. Okay, I forgot to invert these back and forth, so I got them back out, and now we are inverting them, mixing it up real well to both. Okay, and we're going to centrifuge these at 1 minute. Okay, so my erythrocyte sites have been spun down. Okay, and I'm now going to decant the supernatant that is left over, which is basically dump all this top solution out, and I'm going to do the exact same thing that I just did as far as getting 1 to 2 drops of the erythrocytes and mixing it with saline and centrifuging it 2 more additional times. So I'm going to go through the entire procedure I just showed you. However, I'm not going to record that because I don't know that I have enough space on my phone. But it'll be exactly the same. And when I'm done, what's left over should be clear and colorless, and that would be an indication that it's done correctly and the erythrocytes are thoroughly cleaned. Okay, so we have now completed the washing of the erythrocytes 3 total times. And the supernatant, I hope I'm saying that right, is clear, which means it is sufficiently washed. It's clear on both of them. Now I'm going to place 0.02 mLs of the erythrocytes into a labeled test tube. So I'll do it to the donor and then as well to the recipient. And I'm going to mix 0.98 mLs of saline into each tube like each separate tube. So I'm going to go ahead and dump out the clear portion of each of these right over here. Okay, so I've dumped out all the clear liquid in the donor vial. And I have dumped out all the clear liquid in the recipient vial as well. So I've got a 1 ml syringe. I'm going to take the needle off, and I'm doing the recipients first. So this is a no additive test tube here. I'm going to drop 0.98, which is a very, very 0.02 of the blood, the erythrocytes that are left over, which is a very, very small amount. You know, honestly, to accurately get that, I think I'm going to pull up the saline first. Okay. Again, this is a very small amount. I've got 0.98 mLs in here. It's hard to see. Okay. Make sure I have my recipients, erythrocytes, and I'm going to pull up 0.02. Which basically means you're going to have a full 1 ml syringe. I'm going to invert this back and forth. That way I make sure I get all the erythrocytes that I need. And place it in this labeled test tube. Okay. And here's my recipients. It's labeled, marked, everything's good. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing to the donors. So I'm done with this. I have my donor tube, my erythrocytes that are left over. I'm going to go ahead and pull up 0.98 mLs of the sodium chloride first, just because it's easier for me to ensure that I get the 0.02. Trying to get all the bubbles out. Okay. donor. Again, I'm double checking. We do not want to get this mixed up. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and invert this a little bit in here, just so none get stuck in the hub. Okay. And here are my 2 washed erythrocyte samples for my donor and my recipient. Okay, I'm now going to perform the major cross match. So I have a tube labeled major, and I'm going to take 2 drops of the recipient's serum, which we haven't really messed with lately. So recipient, and this is the serum. So I'm going to take 2 drops of the serum and place it in this tube. This is a clean pipette. One, 2. Okay. Make sure and throw that pipette away. I'm going to place the lid back on this serum and just set it aside. And I'm going to use 2 drops of the donor's cell suspension. So it's labeled donor. This is my cell suspension that I just washed and mixed up prior. So 2 drops to 2 drops. And this is again the major cross match. 1, 2. Okay? These pipettes are going to be trashed. I'm going to put my lid back on that and put my lid back on this tube. And here's my major cross match. Okay, I'm going to set it aside, and I'm going to perform the minor cross match next. Well, okay, so I have a tube labeled minor so that I know it's the minor cross match. I'm going to take 2 drops of the donor serum. Let me drop one of those pipettes. Okay. 2 drops of the donor serum. One, 2. Okay. Place the lid back on the donor serum. Whew, I almost dropped it. And set it aside. And I'm going to take 2 drops of the recipient's erythrocyte suspension that we had prior mixed up. So 2 drops. 1, 2. And put the lid back on. And my minor cross match is ready. Okay, now I'm going to set up controls for each of these cross matches I just did. So basically the controls, we're doing the recipient's serum and the recipient's erythrocyte suspension that we have washed together. So I've got my tube labeled as recipient control. I'm going to get all my recipient serum and my recipient erythrocytes. I'm going to do 2 drops, 2 drops of the erythrocytes, and with its own serum. So 2 drops of the serum. Again, this is for the control. That is the last little bit I have, too. And make sure I have the erythrocytes, and I do. 2 drops of this. One, 2. Okay, I'm going to set these aside because I believe we're done with them. And here is my recipient control. I'm going to do the same thing with my donor. 2 drops of each of its own. Okay, that is the last of that, and the erythrocyte suspension as well. Two. Okay. Toss that. Again, I have this labeled as my donor control. Okay. Now I'm going to invert these back and forth and then incubate them at room temperature for 30 minutes.
Did you figure out what the word I can't?
Okay, so they've been setting for 30 minutes. I'm now going to centrifuge all of these tubes for 1 minute at 3,400 RPMs. And as you can see or hear, probably, they're centrifuging right now. Okay, so my tubes have now all centrifuged for a minute, and I'm going to check each of them for agglutination. The controls should have no agglutination because it's the recipient and the donor's own serum and erythrocytes, and they don't. I'm going to shake the tubes by tapping with a finger to detect any grossly visible agglutination, and honestly I don't see it, which is what you're supposed to see in the controls. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the major and minor cross match. The minor cross match looks pretty clear. I mean, to me it looks pretty homogeneous. There doesn't look like there's any agglutination in here. The major, it's kind of hard to tell grossly, so we are going to look at these microscopically just to be 100% sure that these two patients are compatible. I'm now going to transfer a small amount of my major cross match and my minor cross match onto a slide and cover it with a cover slip so that I can check for agglutination and be 100% certain that these patients are compatible. Okay, so I'm going to take a drop or so of the major cross match, place it on the slide, and I'm going to do the same thing with the minor cross match. Place it on a slide. The major's on the left hand and the minor's on the right.
Have an appointment up front.
I'm then going to cover it with a cover slip. Ooh, that one's broken. Okay, and I'm going to view this under low power on the microscope. If I need to increase the contrast, I can lower the condenser, and I'm going to check for agglutination. If no agglutination is present, then these, it'll be evenly dispersed. You're not going to see any grape-like clusters. You do have to be careful not to mix or confuse agglutination with rouleau, or Rolo, however that's pronounced. So I'm going to walk over to the microscope and do that right now. Okay, so my slide is on the microscope. I'm going to view this under low power and check for agglutination. Okay, I saw none. I saw no agglutination or anything, so the erythrocyte suspension that was on this slide was evenly dispersed. There were no grape-like clusters or clumps, which means that these guys are compatible. The recipient is compatible to have the donor's blood. So we're going to go ahead and continue with the blood transfusion.